My name is Sarah Smith. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a professor of history at American River College, and today's date is May 30th, 2023.
Yep.
Okay, let's start off by establishing some of the basics. What's your full name? What are your pronouns? And what's your date of birth?
Yeah, so my full name is Trajan Tashaka Robinson. My date of birth, my pronouns are he, him, his, and my date of birth is January 18th, 1999.
So, how old does that make you?
That makes me 24 years old.
Okay, so tell me a little about yourself. What are your interests and hobbies? What do you like to do?
Yeah, so I like to work out. I do jujitsu. Uh, I've been doing jujitsu for almost 2 years, 2 years in August. And in my free time, I also go to the Crocker Art Museum. I swim. I spend time with family and friends. I love to go out in Sacramento and try new food, to go out, period. And that's a lot of fun for me.
So, what made you start to do jujitsu?
Well, one of my friends from a class, we took Algebra 2 in college, Math 120. They've changed that to Math 333 because it was very difficult. And we bonded through that difficult period. And we ended up being friends after class. And her boyfriend said that I should join jujitsu with them and gave me no other option. So I
The
joined.
rest is history.
Yes.
Um, okay, so where did you grow up and where do you live now?
Yeah, so I grew up, I'd say, across all of California. I've lived in 7 different places and 2 out of state. I grew up young in San Leandro and Sacramento, like Arden area. Arden and then San Leandro, and then to Orange County, in multiple places in Orange County. And then I came up here 4 years ago.
And what made you
Almost
why did you come up to Sacramento 4 years ago?
4 years ago, yeah, almost 5. And we came up because my mom got new work, and I was living on my own in Orange County as a community college student, but it was kind of expensive and other stuff which I could get into, and I just moved up here, and honestly, it was the best decision I made.
So you decided to move up with your mom 4 years ago.
Yes.
And why did you move? You said you moved 7 times. Why do you think you moved 7 times?
Yeah, well, my mom, she was a professional athlete. Some stuff happened with her career, both my mom and my dad, and she didn't complete her college degree. She did about 1 year of college and did some pro stuff. And so when she went out into the labor market, she started as just like a entry level retail associate, and each year she got a new job. And in retail, when you move up, you move to different places and you get new territory. So anytime she got a promotion, we moved.
Okay. What kind of athletes were they?
My mom was a professional downhill skier, and my dad was a track and field runner.
And when you say professional, can you elaborate on that a little?
Yeah, so my dad participated in the Goodwill Games. He was on the U.S. team. My mom, I believe she was on the U.S. team as well. She did not participate in the Olympics though, and yeah, they were both professional and both were on the U.S. teams respectively.
Do you think that's where you get your love of sport from your parents a little bit?
I think so. It's sort of ingrained.
Yeah. So where did you say you live now? You live in Sacramento. You live with your family or
Yes, I live with my family in Folsom.
in Folsom? Okay. So where do you currently attend college? Are you full time or part time? And when did you start?
Yeah, so I'm a full-time student at Folsom Lake College, and I'm going to UC Berkeley in the fall.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What do you study?
I study economics.
And when did you start community college? You said you started in SoCal and then you continued up here.
Yeah, so I started fall of 2018, and then I took a little break in the spring and re-began in the fall of 2019.
Okay. And what made you decide to take a break from college, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I was in entry-level courses for math. Uh, I didn't do well in them. I was also living on my own. It was like a whole new experience, and I was having full-time work, so I had a bad semester academically, and I took a break in the spring just to figure stuff out, to see what I really wanted to do, because I was in a major I didn't like, and figuring out like my living situation. So that's why I took a break.
Okay. And what made you decide to study economics?
Well, I always really wanted to understand how money worked. That was honestly, it was about money. It was about like, how do people own homes? How do people have savings? Stuff like that. I always wanted to understand that. I was around money later in my life as we moved up. My family, even though my mom started to earn more money, it never felt like we had much. So it was really like understanding that money management side. And then it then became about like the nerdy side, like how do developing economies work? How does Africa develop? Stuff like that. That's actually like near and dear to my heart. So
Also, you said you moved up as you were became older. What do you mean when you say that?
my family got more money, like we became middle class.
Oh, and when you were younger, how would you classify your class status when you were younger?
Working class.
Working class. Okay, can you tell me about your social identities, broadly speaking, with regard to race, ethnicity, sexuality, gender, ability, religion, and so on?
Sure, those are complex. We can start with race. So my dad's Jamaican, a Jamaican African American. So his family lived in Jamaica, and they were recruited by the U.S. military. For my grandfather, excuse me, and he served in Korea and Vietnam, and his family got to move to the U.S. because of that. So we're Jamaicans, but we're also African Americans at the same time. Um, and then my mom, she's Austrian and German. Her mother's German, father's Austrian. He came over from Austria after World War II to Northern California. So I'm biracial, but I was raised without my mom's side of her family, and I was raised as a Black American, Jamaican Black American specifically. And I'm queer, so we can get into that as well.
Yeah, elaborate, please. You say you're queer.
Yes, so I identify as a gay cis male. I've known I was gay since I was in fourth grade. Knew very early. There's probably signs even earlier than that. I used to think I was bisexual because when you grow up, you just assume you're gonna like women. You see every television show, you see the movies, and I'm just like, yeah, that's what my life is. So when I understood that I also had an attraction to the same sex, I was like, oh wow, I think I have this and that still. And then until high school is when I like understood, experiences like with dating women that it just wasn't for me.
And how old were you at that time? You said high school?
High school, yeah, like about ninth grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you out as gay to friends and family?
Yes.
So when did you come out? And why? What was that process like for you?
Yeah. So it's like fragmented. I came out, well, technically the first person I told was in fifth grade. He had a weird reaction, of course, as kids do. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is strange territory. Let's be suspicious with it. Then sixth grade, I came out, and then I got a lot of hate. I lived in like a conservative area, which is probably some of that reason why it wasn't very accepting at that time. And especially given the area's politics, they weren't really vibing with it. And so I came out. Reaction wasn't so positive. And then I went back in the closet and kind of lived like this double life all the way up until I was probably like 17 or 18. I'm 24 now, where some people knew me as gay in certain parts of like the county and the city, and in other cities, people knew me as a straight like athlete, and so I lived like two lives.
So you said that the reaction was not positive. Do you mind elaborating? What do you mean by that? Why do you feel like you had to lead a double life?
Yeah, well, initially when I came out, like it took 2 days, and then everyone was asking me, "Are you gay? Are you gay?" Like wherever I went, and then some people, you know, threatened me physically. I got into fights because I was raised to fight back. So I got in like, physical altercations with other kids. It just wasn't pretty. It was too much stuff going on.
um, did you find support anywhere at that time, or was it mainly it just felt too difficult?
Um, no, I didn't have any support, and I didn't seek it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And you said you were in a conservative area. Where did you live?
I lived in Orange County.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty conservative area. Later, when I grew up, stuff was fine. Like you make friends, you make family, and all that. But early Orange County during the 2000s was a different Orange County.
Um, and so how did it feel to, you said you sort of lived a double life and you were in the closet until around 18 or 19, right?
Yes.
How did that feel to you emotionally? It's quite a while to be sort of living a double life.
Yeah, how did it feel emotionally? Well, I guess you could say insecure, but that's just what it is. I didn't think of it as any other way. Um, I feel like that's kind of the life for some gay males where you just, there's a part of secrecy and that's just what it is. I see it differently now. Yeah.
Um, do you feel comfortable talking about your family's reaction?
Sure. Yeah, my family, they're real positive. Even my dad, he had gay friends growing up. His best friend turned out to be gay. He was on the track team, and a lot of their donors, some of them were gay. He had teammates who were gay, so he was real positive. And my mom was too. There was some shock about me not trusting them with that information, but besides that, they warmed up really well to it.
So some shock with regard to the fact that you didn't trust them with the information. What do you mean when you say that?
They expected me to like share that with them, and they felt, I don't know, they were upset that I didn't tell them sooner.
Did they feel like why do you think they were shocked? I mean, I or why I guess I should say why did you feel like you didn't, given their shock upon finding out, why did you feel like you would prefer not to share that with them?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a safe place. Like, even though I know that my family's accepting, and my dad's very accepting, there was still like those patriarchal norms. Like, he grew up tough and he grew up in the hood, and being weak or being like, I guess they associate being gay with being weak. Like, you just have to be that much more stronger and you have to deal with that much more, and being perceived as like a sissy or whatever word, derogatory word you want to put on top of it, is just not what you want to have. So sharing that information with him, and living in a household where you had to be strong and all of that, it just didn't seem like something I wanted to do and something that was safe or comfortable.
Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Were you out to them?
No.
Um, so you said you identify as a cis man. Can you talk a little bit about your gender expression? Like, how do you, as a gay man, how do you express your gender?
Yeah, as a gay man, I'm a comfortable man, comfortable male. I do a lot of the, I guess you could say, stereotypical straight guy sports and things and interests, which, kind of throws off some other people. But I see myself as a gay man, totally comfortable being a man and totally comfortable with my feminine side as well. because sometimes I see that come out as well. And yeah, uh, yeah. Maybe I can redo that part.
What do you want to elaborate or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, totally comfortable, gay man, totally comfortable in my masculinity, totally comfortable with some of the feminine sides of myself. I have feminine sides, and they live in a comfortable duality. And sometimes I present as masculine, sometimes I don't. And however I present, I'm comfortable with. And I have some stereotypical masculine interests, but it doesn't detract from any side of myself. And some people may be surprised at some of what I do or how I present, but I'm not surprised at all, and it's completely natural.
Do you ever feel like you have to sort of hide your more feminine side at all?
I do.
Okay. Under what circumstances?
Under, I think, being taken seriously uh, in work, or even you could say advocacy. When you're a man, people want to see you act like a man. They want to see you um, embody those masculine traits, and when you don't, people don't trust you as quickly.
You think they treat you more seriously if they sort of view you as typically masculine?
Yes.
Um, so you mentioned that your dad is an immigrant and your mom's family is from Austria. It's a very broad question, but how do you think that shaped your experiences growing up?
Yeah, I think it made me really comfortable with other people's cultures. I'm really comfortable being around people who are like myself and even being in rooms where everyone doesn't speak English. Like, it doesn't upset me.
And personally, do you identify strongly with being Jamaican or Austrian?
Uh, I identify with being Jamaican pretty strongly. I've gotten more in touch with my Austrian side, and both my parents lived in Europe, so I see myself as some sort of Jamaican European mix. A lot of European influence from both sides.
So it's probably more questions I'm going to ask later, but on that. But you mentioned that your family isn't religious, and that would you care to talk about? Did you grow up religious?
Sure. No, well, my community where I grew up was pretty religious. So I knew about religion from as early as kindergarten. We did the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm not sure if it was a parent or the teacher, but they really explained about God and the meaning of God and how God's everywhere and everything. And just early in elementary, where I lived, like I understood about God from a Christian lens. Um, yeah, but my family themselves, no, my dad, he grew up religious, but his parents didn't give that to him, so he was an atheist, and he had a strong convictions about that. And my mom grew up pretty strong Catholic, but later became agnostic, still with a belief in God.
And are you religious?
Um, a little bit. I went to Christian school, so that's like I guess where my spiritual tradition is like rooted in. It's rooted in that sort of Christianity. I consider myself spiritual. Do I believe everything in the books to 100% to the T? Like still working with it, but I consider myself spiritual.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think your beliefs sort of how does that shape your identity as a gay man, if it does?
Yeah, well, I've like studied a little bit of religion. I've been really involved with it as an adult, even taken a religion class in college, and really studied like how Jesus lived, some of his beliefs, and I don't really believe in hell. I don't want to get too deep into it and like cause a big battle about whether hell is real or not and when that was introduced into the Christian faith, but I don't believe in hell, and I don't believe that if Jesus is the Messiah, per that religious belief, I don't believe that Jesus would hate me. I believe that, the Jesus I know would actually want to understand someone like me, because Jesus really tended to the poor. He tended to the outcast and some of the people that were on the fringes of society. So that really inspires me. Yeah.
Um, so did your no, I just want to have a few questions about class. So did your family struggle growing up financially at all? How so?
Um, I guess you could say money was tighter. It was tight. I don't know, but I never felt like we struggled. We just didn't have certain things. But we were never, it never felt bad. There was a lot of happiness and good times, even when we didn't have money. So, yeah.
Did you go on vacations growing up?
No. But we went to Six Flags and stuff. That was fun. Always went to Six Flags. Yeah. That's my vacation.
And how would you define your class status in the present?
Middle class.
Middle class.
Yeah.
Why would you say that?
Because we have enough of our family has enough of like a disposable income to like buy clothes, like sometimes go on vacation, sometimes have like things, and we're just not surviving. We have a little extra.
A little extra.
Yeah.
And do you work?
Yeah, I work. I pay for my college, so we're middle class. Like they can't afford to pay for it, but we're middle class enough to be comfortable. Yeah.
Okay, so you paid for your college. Where do you work, or did you work?
Well, when I first moved up here, I worked. I was staging homes in real estate, so I was moving furniture. I was like a mover.
Mm-hmm.
It would stage the homes, and I would assist, like the interior designer. And then I got a job at Staples, and then I got a job at the college, and then I had several more jobs from there within Los Rios.
And if you don't mind my asking, how much money did you make in those various jobs?
Minimum wage, not more than like $12,000 a year, probably somewhere around there.
And how many hours per week did you work, do you think?
Probably somewhere around like 15, 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said you worked for the college. What did you do for the college?
I was a student assistant to the Equity Center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you do anything else for the district?
Yeah, I was a student assistant. I did a whole bunch of I would do surveys. I would do like a lot of free work, and I would sometimes get like gift cards or money. You can surprisingly get a lot of gigs doing stuff. They need students. They need stuff like that. So I did that, and then I became the student trustee, and that pays a stipend. So I've been a student trustee for the last year, and that's sort of been my work.
How did you like working for the college, and then how did you like working as a student trustee?
Yeah, I really liked working for the college. I like being with students. I really like being with professors. I love the faculty at Folsom Lake. They're some of my biggest supporters. I love the administration. I really had a great time at Folsom Lake College, and I liked everyone, and I loved my supervisor who now works at Sacramento City College. So I had a great time working in the college. And the district has a different culture. The district, I didn't like the district as much, but honestly, I had a great time, and it was a privilege to be with the district. And if I could stay longer, I would. I feel like I just started warming up to it, and it just started being better. Yeah.
So it's sort of an unusual thing to do, run for the position of student trustee. What made you do that?
Yeah, well, I was a student senate president, and I was doing a lot of great stuff in the college. And I felt like the next step was to really expand what I was doing. I felt like my vision for students at Folsom Lake College could be expanded across the district. And I believe that I had the right beliefs, the right drive, and experience to do something meaningful. So I ran.
So you were in student government, you were the president. So
Yeah.
why do you think you became interested in sort of, that kind of work, becoming an advocate?
It's like who I am. It comes natural. Like I advocate for people, advocate for myself. It was kind of how I was raised, to really raise your voice for other people. When you see wrong, call out wrong. So it was only natural.
How did you bring your various identities to your work as an advocate, as a the student president, government president, and then as a student trustee?
Yeah, so I felt like it helped me understand I could put myself in people's shoes easier.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I could put myself in people's shoes easier. I felt like I had a lot of empathy. I really embraced diversity of opinion, diversity of the individuals on the campus. I could really empathize with them and really want to hear where they're coming from and understand some of their struggles with some of the hurdles in the education system, specifically in the district or at the college.
Would you say that you were committed to equity? Like the work of, you said you were an assistant for the equity office, right?
Yeah.
Or the equity center at FLC. Did you bring that kind of vision into your advocacy work as well?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
How so?
You know, I feel like everything we did was about equity. I think the United States itself is founded upon equality, and equity is a little step above because when we look at everyone equally, some people may have some deficits from the past. Everyone's not on equal footing. So when we're making decisions for folks, or when we're trying to shift policy, we're really thinking about it from an equitable lens. And I think it's really equality 2.0, honest equality, I'd say, and that's how it informed my work.
So were you out as gay as the student president, government president?
Yes.
And then as a student trustee?
Yes.
And what does that mean exactly? Like, how are you out? Are you out to people around you? Like, what do you mean when you say you're out?
Yeah, well, it means that I think it means something. It also means nothing at the same time. So what it does mean, so when something about queer students happens nationally or even locally, I'm going to be an advocate. I'm going to raise my voice, and I'm going to look for some of those stakeholders in the community and try to look at them to how we can get some action done, and really just be forward-facing with my identity and showing people like we exist, who we are, and helping some of those students that are out there that are also with the same identity and build community. And then also at the same time, I'm just being me, so I'm presenting as myself. I'm showing my feminine side. I'm having fun. I'm connecting with people, and I'm just being me. And I think when you're you, people really gravitate towards that, and they like that. So a lot of times I forgot about it, and then sometimes you're reminded of it. But it's a balance between those two things.
Did you ever have any issues, or did you ever feel like worried about coming out in certain contexts doing that work?
Yeah. I was just expressing that, being out as gay, being out as a gay male, sometimes I feel the expectation to present as a straight male would, or how I'm perceived in that way. I messed that up again. We can edit that out. Or whoever's going to edit it will edit it out.
You can edit it out. No, I'm just kidding.
Anyways, back to get to it. I believe that people like to see men act as men, or if you see women act as women. So being a gay male, they don't want to see the feminine sides of myself. They want to see me present as masculine. And as a straight cis male would. So when I present in that way, I feel as though I'm taken more seriously, and I'm trusted faster as well. Even if they know I'm gay, if I present that way, people are more comfortable with it. And I feel that expectation.
Did that shape your experience as a student trustee at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about optics as a lot being gay, and being black as well. I know I'm biracial, but I'm 6'4". I'm obviously African American, and there'll be expectations about who I, or let's say preconceived notions about both of those identities. So I think about optics actually a little bit too much. Yeah, a little bit too much.
And why do you say you think about it too much? Like, how does it feel to feel like you have to think about optics a lot?
I think it kind of stops you from living in the moment. I'm thinking about how I will be perceived. I think about my message a lot. And then sometimes when you overthink things, things go awry. So I wish I could be more in the moment. But sometimes when you're doing certain work, you feel like you don't have that privilege. Sometimes you don't have that privilege, but sometimes you do. So I'm really working on like just understanding that better, and I'm sure I'll be working with that for a little bit longer, if not a lot longer.
Wait, you said you're 23 or 24?
24.
And you said you came out around the age of, you were like really out at 18 or 19, right?
Yeah, really out. Yeah.
Really out.
Not double life.
So what happened at that moment? That like you suddenly, not suddenly, but yeah, what happened at that age that you decided to be out to everybody?
um, well, I felt like if people really understood who I was and those friends that I had, if they really knew who I was, um, it wouldn't change anything. Um, and it shouldn't change anything because I'm the same person that I was when they knew me as straight Trajan versus gay Trajan. So I came out to save myself some energy and give myself some grace and maybe educate some of the people around me, and teach them about my whole self, about all of me. So that's why it came out completely.
And how did it feel?
Um, you know, some things didn't change, but some things actually did get better. I really liked being able to express myself without reservations, but then I found myself like still holding back, like being openly gay, but still holding back because I had held back for so long. So some things didn't change because of that, and that was the process.
Um, so do you ever feel like you experience mental health issues or depression as a college student?
Yes.
Uh,
Like, yeah.
yeah. And why do you think that is? Do you think your class and your identities shape your experiences at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think being a college student, you have a lot of demands on you. Um, I don't think social media makes things easier. I don't think COVID makes anything easier. I don't think the way society is right now makes anything easier. I don't think it's very easy for young people right now, but it's definitely not impossible. But when I hear about students facing mental health issues or young people in general, myself, I understand. It makes sense. Um, and if older generations were dealing with the same thing, I think they'd understand too.
So how has it been for you personally in over the last few years? You mentioned COVID, right?
Yeah.
Have you had some struggles that have interfered, do you think, with your ability to focus on your studies?
Yeah. The beginning of COVID, my house is really loud. It's not a place for studying, um, for me at least. I think in general, for anyone. Anyways, um, with everything being locked down, it made it difficult for me. I had to find new spaces. The college was my safe space, uh, in my place where I could focus and get help. When that shut down, it kind of like uprooted everything, and I had to find new ways to be successful in school.
Did you struggle in school in your classes at all during that period?
Um, no, I don't think, no, the grades didn't struggle, but the grades didn't reflect my mental health. So I struggled a lot mentally and physically. My grades are great, but at a cost.
Anything else you want to say on that? We could always come back to it as well.
Um, I think COVID was a difficult time for a lot of people. I think I actually suffered after COVID because I, you know, before I used so much energy, I used everything I had to get through the pandemic. So as soon as we were coming back, that was when my grades started to fall. I was burnt out. I didn't have anything left. And I was always saving, I always had that date in my head. I was always saving the date. I was like, they're reopening now and here. And then it was like, new variant. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah. So when we came back was actually when I suffered
Oh.
academically. Yeah.
Hmm. And when you say you suffered academically, what do you mean? Like, did you drop, like, not do as well in your classes? Did you have to drop classes, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I had to drop some classes. And then I took Calculus 3, which is not an easy class. I barely passed it. I got a C. I don't get C's. A lot of classes that I would do well. I think I got some B's in other classes. A lot of classes I would have done like really well in, like I wasn't doing well in. I had to drop some classes too. So I did like shit. I think I did like an extra year because of it. That's why I was trustee. Yeah, and that's how I became trustee. But yeah,
Um, is there anything you think your professors could have done to support you better as a student when you were going through all of that?
um, I think my professors did a pretty good job. I think they did the best that they could with the resources that they had. Like, since I worked for the school, like I knew what resources that they had. Like, I would have loved if they could have like met online like twice a week or like tried to form some like social space for all the students so it didn't feel like we were like teaching ourselves from a encyclopedia. But given like how quickly they had to pivot, um, the lack of training that they had, and how some just had never done an online class before. I think what they did was great given the resources and time that they had. Yeah, and that's honest to God. Like, it was hard for them. It was hard as hell for me, um, and I think the students and the professors did what they could.
Can you think of any faculty members in particular that, or staff that felt particularly supportive and you could sort of turn to, for whatever reason, to
Uh,
help you sort of like persevere?
yeah, Dr. Victoire Trochezi um, always was sending me emails throughout the pandemic. She was inviting me to like events, like poetry workshops, sending me jobs. Like, she has been so great with stuff like that. That's like the first name that comes to mind. I also know Jennifer Black. Jennifer Black was terrific. She runs an amazing online class, and I really leaned on her for like mentorship and stuff around business because I was taking accounting classes. And she was amazing as well. There's so many other amazing faculty that helped me, but those are the two standouts that come to mind immediately.
Why do they stand out to you? Why do you think you had a close relationship with them?
I think I had a close relationship with Jennifer Black because we're similar personalities. I was going to say we're the same people. That's not true. But we're similar. And I had such an interest in like accounting, and she loves to teach it. So um, I forgot the question.
Just why? Like, why do you think you bonded with them? Did they reach out to you, or did you identify with them in particular ways?
I think they were open to me reaching out. They were comfortable with me as a person, all of me, and They really liked how hard I was going. Like in the accounting class, I was working very hard. I was very curious, and I loved her sense of humor. I loved to joke around too, so that was great. And Victoire, we have similar interests in poetry, in advocacy, activism, music. So I think both of those relationships were successful because there's the personal side and the academic side lined up.
Um, so I want to talk about high school some. Um, well, my first question is very broad. Can you tell me a little about your educational journey from high school to the present?
Yeah, shit, get ready. Okay. I went to 4 high schools. I did sports. Because both my parents were professional athletes. I'm a gifted natural athlete as well. I did basketball, honestly. Like, I didn't really care that much about basketball. It was because everyone told me, "You're so tall." Like, I'm 6 foot, like, by sixth grade. So, everyone's going to want me to play basketball. So, I did it. And I did it, and I didn't really care about it. Like, I cared about winning and being great. So I worked very hard because I was in love with that goal, but the sport itself took a long time to love, and now I love it. But I didn't love it then. So I went to 4 high schools for sports. You know, freshman year, I went to 2 high schools. Should have stayed at the first one I went to, and that was the best one I went to. Probably would have been successful academically and socially. I went to another high school in my town. Um, that was a terrible experience for all sorts of reasons. Um, Awful. And sometimes I think about going back there and like changing that school. They did a bad job with the students. That school is called San Juan Hills High School, and during the time I was there, and then I went to another school. It's called Tesoro High School. I had another not so good experience there. They just weren't really good with students who were like struggling at the time. Like you just didn't feel cared about. So I struggled through there, but then I had some people who recognized it and tried to help me. But I was hell bent on leaving that school. I stayed there for a year. That's my third high school. And then I went to a Christian school. I actually had the best experience at that Christian school. So that first high school I went to, El Toro, and then the last high school I went to, the fourth one, Santa Barbara Christian. I was a junior, and I really liked that school. I went there for sports. I was on a basketball scholarship, and people really reached out to me through there. I was struggling. I got to learn a lot. I was struggling, and I got to learn more about like my emotions, like emotional intelligence. I got to learn about myself, and all the bullshit at the other schools like was not present there. So I really got to like grow into myself. And
How old were you at that point?
I was let's see, I was an old high schooler. So I was like 17, 18, probably 18. I graduated when I was 19.
Why did you go from high school to high school?
Yeah, so if a program wasn't it for me and for the goals that me and my family had, we would leave it. So we left. The first program I went to, like they promised me like certain deals, like oh we'll scholarship this, which they did, and then we'll put you on varsity. And then okay, I'm starting JV and sitting varsity, not even getting opportunities to travel with them. So uh, what they promised wasn't upheld, so we went to another school, and it was sort of transactional like that.
And what was so terrible about, you said, the second school?
Well, the second school, they were like sticklers about everything. It was like they were looking to get kids caught in trouble, and it was less about the students learning and being successful, and it was more like you go here at this time, you do this, you take this test, and it was I don't know, like a doctor's office. And I think other students felt the same way, that they were just, I don't know, some of the folks who were in charge at the time were just looking to, there was punitive, I guess you could say. They were looking to, like, the kids who they thought were bad, they were looking to get them in trouble. So for some reason, to turn them good. But that doesn't happen. So good intentions, bad results.
Were you a student that they looked at and they thought was potentially bad?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think that was?
I stood out. I think I was like a parentified child. I was kind of like a little dolt in my head. I had like a lot of responsibility, and I didn't
Say that again. You were a what child?
Parentified child.
Oh, you're the second interviewee to have used that word, parentified. I hadn't heard it before. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, it's like a child who's like made an adult and given responsibilities. Yeah, so I had a lot of responsibilities. I had a responsibility over my younger brother. I knew a lot of adult stuff, like a young age, like stuff you usually wouldn't know. I'm not going to get into the details, but just by the time I went to that high school, I didn't need guidance from these people. I didn't want to deal with any of these like adults. Like I was more interested in like my teachers and my friends and really getting through. And I don't know. I feel like some people, they don't like to see that. I was like fiercely independent. You couldn't tell me nothing, and I was very respectful. I just wanted to mind my business, and if I was like late for like 1 minute, I didn't, because of stuff at home I was dealing with. I don't want to be like yelled at or punished or this or that. I'm like, can you help me get to my class? Or ask what's going on. Can you not do what you're doing? And I think maybe my responses, which were kind of like that, they didn't like that.
What happened if you were 1 minute late to school? You got yelled at?
Well, they would, yeah, they'd get on their little, like, they had these golf carts and walkie-talkies, and it was like, kind of like a little police system, and they'd try and look and find you. Or what if I forgot my book in the locker, so now I have these people searching for me and I have to tell you what I'm doing and what's going on and make sure I don't have drugs and I'm not doing this or that. Why would you even assume I have drugs? Just stuff that was very unnecessary, like for someone that age. I don't know why it was set up that way, but it didn't feel like I was being looked after, and it just made me even more annoyed. And I had common sense, and I felt like the adults should have it too.
And we're all talking about Orange County, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Was your high school very racially diverse? Do you think race had anything to do with it? How the sort of students were treated, how you were treated?
Yeah. In Orange County, there's not a lot of black people, but there's Mexican people, and a lot of the racism is dealt towards like the Mexican kids. The school is about probably 40% Mexican or Hispanic, predominantly Mexican though, the student population. And yeah, those kids they share like some similar experiences that I had, that they were kind of put into a box or they were looked at a little bit harder, and I feel like I experienced that as well.
How do you think? So this was a large public high school?
Yeah.
Okay. The third one you went to was also a big public high school?
Yes.
Was it sort of similar experiences at the third one, or?
The third one, no. So it was less like I don't know how you'd call it, like a
police state?
Yes, less of a police state, and it was more of like a school where the kids' parents had a lot of money, so all the faculty and the admin expected all the students to have like lots of support, and they didn't like do some work with the students because they expected the parents to pick up on it and have those interests. Whereas I was largely like taking care of myself, and my parents were like signing off the papers and giving me money to do stuff, and I was getting the rest done. So I didn't really feel supported in that environment. I didn't really relate to the other students. I had like dreadlocks, like I had this look also I wasn't in control of, like crazy family. My dad made me look a certain way, didn't allow me to dress myself. So I had this look that wasn't palatable for my high school, that I wasn't in control of. And I also had too much control over what I was doing and not enough support. And it just did not vibe well. So socially, I didn't get along with the other students. And the teachers, like, I didn't feel like understood me because they were expecting me to have that same like uh, background as the other students, and I just didn't have it.
Was that school less racially diverse than your previous school?
Yes, the other school was like half and half. The school was like mainly white, all white.
Did that influence your time, do you think, at that school?
Uh,
I mean, you kind of said a little bit, like, yeah. But,
yeah,
yeah.
and I had typically lived around the later parts in high school, like predominantly white neighborhoods and areas, and did just fine and had lots of white friends. But this school was just another beast, and some of the students here were not as open to me as some of the students in other places were. So I really felt that, and that influenced my decision to leave. Yeah.
Did you notice any queer student life at the schools?
Um, the first school I went to had some. Granted, the first school I went to was more removed. So Orange, you have South Orange County, North Orange County. First school I went to was closer to the north, which is more diverse area, a more socially liberal area, you could say. Um, the second and third school was more in the heart of South Orange County, and so it was less. And there wasn't really gay straight alliances. There was some queer students, but they did like the performing arts. Uh, so I wasn't involved with any gay straight activities there or clubs at those schools.
Did any of your classes in high school cover queer or trans topics?
We talked about gay people like once in sixth grade, and it was because it was like the ancient Greeks. Yeah.
And was that a very noticeable absence to you in the curriculum?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think gay people exist throughout history, so to explain history without that sounds dishonest.
Do you think you would have appreciated your class? Like, looking back on it now, do you feel like you would have wanted your courses to focus, at least in part, on queer and trans experiences? Like, what would that have meant to you, I guess?
Oh, it would have meant a lot. Um, yeah, sometimes it almost feels too good to be true, but it really should be true. When I reflect back, like it would have made a lot of sense because there was gay students in the classes. Um, there was trans students back then. Um, so it would have made perfect sense to teach about it. Probably would have prevented some of the struggles that some of the other students had, including myself. Yeah, and it's totally realistic. I mean, we're in society, uh, so why can't we learn about us? We're a real thing. We're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you decided to go to community college. Or anything else you want to say about high school? Did you experience harassment or discrimination due to your identities broadly?
Yeah. So the fourth high school. Sorry, all these high schools.
That's okay.
Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, but it's my story. I went to this fourth high school, a Christian school. Now, the Christian school was relatively accepting, surprisingly, and I had a great experience there. But in the sports, I definitely was discriminated against. I didn't know it until after I graduated. I wonder why I had such a hard time, why I was treated the way I was treated. And I didn't tell anyone I was gay at the time, but they had assumed it. And I found out from my mom, because my mom was friends with some people from another program. Apparently, my coaches were talking shit on me, like making fun of me apparently for being gay. I had not told a soul or dated anyone for that reason, but somehow they found out. And yeah, so in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense why I got that scholarship, and then nothing happened, and why I was treated the way I was treated. Um, yeah, made a lot of sense.
So, looking back, did the other student athletes, treat you a certain way? Are there any specific examples?
Um, I think sometimes they were harsher to me, but I think they just were harsher to me because like they followed the lead of the adults. Uh, I think in the end, my teammates accepted me for being gay. They knew it, and it was like an unspoken thing. I think one time someone cracked a joke about me being gay, and they said like, "Whoa, cut that out." It was just like something you didn't talk about or touch upon without my approval, which was nice. But yeah, that was it.
And when that happened, what did you say? They said cut that out, but what did you say anything?
I was shocked that the person who made the joke, the remark that they did make, I didn't say anything. I was like, what? And they immediately hopped on it. I didn't say a thing. Yeah. I think sometimes you're too shocked to respond in the moment. Yeah.
You weren't out at that school? Were you out after high school?
I was out after high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we left off talking about high school, but let's talk about college now. Did you go straight from high school to college?
Yes.
And where did you go before again?
I went to a school called Saddleback College.
And that was in Orange County?
Yeah.
How did you like Saddleback?
I liked Saddleback a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good school.
Why do you say that?
So I kind of complained about like the overly police nature of high school. In college, I could pick when I went to class, like the times when I went to class, and I showed up to every class and participated. People weren't looking over my shoulder. I liked the schools, like professors. It was academically free. You could talk about anything. I felt like in high school you couldn't talk about some things. It was kind of like um, I don't know. Some stuff was whitewashed, and I liked how college was set up, and I liked the students in college. I liked some of the older students. Yeah,
Yeah, it's nice in community college. It's a mix of ages.
yeah, I really like that.
So you thought academically in high school it was whitewashed?
Yeah,
Can you elaborate a little?
yeah. I feel like okay. For instance, I remember this is a little bit before high school. This was elementary, but Obama was he was being inaugurated, and they were trying to have us not watch it, not be able to watch it. A bunch of historical stuff like that. They really tried to prevent. Um, I think we would talk about history, we would talk about politics, we would talk about certain stuff like that, and it was just you could tell that people were being nice and they weren't really getting into the truth, and it didn't have to be. They just didn't want to talk about the truth, and there was a certain narrative I felt like that didn't benefit me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit? What's the narrative?
I feel like the narrative like erased my identity. So like black people, gay people, we weren't really the focus of it. If we were in it, we were like the side character. And you know, how dare us have any objections to that or be unhappy? Because we're supposed to be grateful. Yeah,
And you had that critique when you were younger?
yeah,
You knew what was going on?
yeah. You implicitly understood that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you went to Saddleback College, you felt like you said you had more academic freedom?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you feel like your education became a little less whitewashed?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It was a healthy shock.
Did you feel like you could be honest with your opinions in the classroom?
Yeah, you know, I really did.
Mm-hmm.
I did.
Why did you decide to go to community college?
I decided to go to community college because, to be honest, I wanted to play basketball for a scholarship because I was told that's what I was going to do, and that it'd be free. But then I really looked into what it takes. I have to take it SAT, ACT, which I wasn't prepared for. Um, I wasn't keeping up to date with that stuff. I got the impression from people that I could just be some great athlete and everything would be taken care of. Um, and that wasn't the truth, so I wasn't really prepared. And by the time that I was preparing myself to go, the only schools that were offering were private schools, and their tuition was through the roof. Yeah, so I chose community college instead.
Did you end up playing sports in community college?
No.
Okay. How come?
I felt like it took away from me academically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of a big transition because you were so into sports in high school, but you realized that it was just taking away from your academics.
Absolutely. I feel like at the end of high school, I realized that I was intelligent and that I had experiences that I had navigated, which proved that I could make good decisions. And I also started selling essays, and some of those students went to big colleges, Baylor, Notre Dame. So if they can go there, I can go there too.
Wow. So you were helping other people go to these. As you were going to community college, you realized that people you were helping academically were going to these like fancy 4 years.
Exactly.
You know.
hmm
So that sort of did that change you? Change your goals a little?
It changed my goals. It definitely expanded them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that these students who were going to these fancy four-year institutions, that I was smart and they wanted to, ask me for help. And I didn't have the same vision for myself. I suddenly then began to have that vision for myself. Yeah.
So you said you're an economics major. What do you want to do ultimately with your major?
Ultimately, I imagine myself in some public service role. Um, I think my dream is giving back, um, whether that's here or whether that's in another part of the world, is to be determined. I think the immediate goal is to build up some skills, though, and get some education, and then that would be my final goal. Yeah.
Do you think your identities will influence what you end up doing for your career?
Yeah. Uh, Definitely.
How so?
I think that I would love to help. Well, first of all, I'd love to go to certain parts of Africa and work in development, work on getting an education there. Um, and I think helping some of the queer folks across the world is an amazing organization called Rainbow Railroad. I really believe in their mission. They get queer people from across the world that have hostile laws against LGBTQ people, and they get them to countries on asylum. That stuff really inspires me.
That's awesome.
If I wasn't doing that work, I'd either be donating, but I want to be involved somehow with that. So, yeah.
That sounds really great. It's an organization I'd heard of previously.
Yeah.
So you're a first generation college student, is that true?
Yes.
Okay. How do you think that's shaped your college experience, if it has?
Yeah, well, it means that when I stepped in, I knew nothing about how things are going to go, and I didn't really have parents to lean on, which I realize you don't need parents to lean on for everything. It doesn't make it easier, but I just figured it out myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you have help figuring out how to navigate college?
I ended up getting help from people at the school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyone I could ask, students, faculty, admin, all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about courses. Can you talk about your experience taking courses in college that either wholly or in part focused on queer and trans topics?
Um, that's assuming that I've taken those classes that focus on those.
Wholly or in part. So if you've had any classes that have even touched briefly on queer and trans topics, have you?
No,
Oh, none of your classes.
no.
Okay. Have you taken classes in humanities and social sciences?
Yeah.
Well, you're an economics major. That's social science, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think it is that your classes, none of your classes, have touched on queer or trans topics?
I don't know.
Are there classes you took that you think could have, maybe?
I think history though. I took history 311.
1865 to the present?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that didn't talk about queerness at all?
Actually, they did talk about queer people being hunted in the federal government.
Oh, during the Cold War?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess they did. No, yeah, to some extent. We learned about that.
Sounds like it was a brief mention. Is that true, or did the professor go into some depth?
It was brief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talked about the topic. We didn't get too in depth with it. Yeah. It was important. It was about like the militarization, U.S. Against the Soviets, and then we were doing like crazy stuff to make sure we were like top notch, including like hunting down like communists in the government and gay people who were at risk of being compromised using So that's all I remember from it.
Yeah, the lavender scare.
Yeah.
So, if you could have, would you have liked to take classes that focused on queer or trans topics in some way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, why is that?
I think there's like a certain wisdom that comes from like learning about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that would have been helpful, and I think it would have been like intellectually stimulating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you imagine what courses you might have taken that focused on queer and trans topics? Like, there's the two top classes I can think of in the district are, and I don't know if they're offered at FLC, but Intro to LGBTQ Studies and Queer Literature class.
Ooh, the queer literature class would have sounded fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you only take classes at FLC?
I took class mainly at FLC, but I took class at every campus.
Okay. So did your classes focus at all on the Black experience?
A little bit. A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like more than what I had in Orange County. I had these like low standards.
Okay.
So my English class was advanced critical composition, English writing 302. And it actually had a good amount of like African American literature and writers. Yeah, some good stuff in there. Yeah.
How did you like that class? What did it mean to you to be in a class that focused, at least in part, on the Black experience?
I liked it. I thought it was a great class. We learned a lot from a lot of people, and I feel like just having Black writers in there is only honest because Black writers have contributed so much to literature in America and to the world in general, and there's some great topics and ideas that come from their work. So I thought it was a great experience to learn about it, learn a little bit about like my culture, see a little bit of reflection of myself, and I felt like it was only fair, it was only honest. Yeah.
Was that your first experience taking a class that focused so much on the Black experience?
Yeah.
When you transfer to UC Berkeley, do you think you might take classes that focus on the queer experience at all?
Yes. Yeah.
Why is that?
Sorry?
Why is that? Or what do you think you might do?
I just want to learn. I think there's a whole lot of stuff in there that we don't know. And I think it's our job right now to learn about ourselves and to tell our stories and document our stories. Um, and so that means it's my job to learn about that history and to learn about myself. Um, yeah. And I think I get surprised every single time I actually take the time to learn about queer folks or about our history, about whatever contributions that we have made. Whenever I like learn about it or take the time to learn about it, excuse me, I learned so much that I didn't know before. So, uh, yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you feel like you have to teach others, including maybe even faculty, your professor, about what it means to be queer or about the queer experience?
Good question. Um, I haven't had that experience with faculty, but I would imagine I probably would have to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I have it all the time with people,
Mm-hmm.
and I think faculty would be no different.
In the English class, was the queer black experience covered at all? Queer black
Um,
authors or
no, yeah.
um, uh, what's interesting here is like when you transfer to UC Berkeley, you'll have to really focus, I imagine, on the classes that are in your major, right? So it can be a little bit more difficult to explore, um, which could indicate why it's even that much more important for community college students to have the opportunity to take classes that focus on relevant experiences to them.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, I had that experience, right? Transferring to UC Berkeley, I didn't really find that I had time to explore. But I wish I would have actually, even though I didn't feel like I had the time.
Yeah, you're right, because yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Um, so, can you talk some about your experiences with classroom participation and belonging in the classroom? How do you generally participate in the classroom, and what classroom experiences have you had that have made you feel like actively participating?
Yeah, I'm really engaged in the classroom. I'm really interested in learning, even if I don't care that much about the class, because it's important for my success. I ask a lot of questions. I try to ask questions that people haven't asked before. I practice, asking good questions in the classroom. I practice my speaking there, maybe even debating if I need to debate the professor. Uh, and yeah, the classes I've been in so far in person like allow that. So uh, not every class though. Some professors like they want to teach it so well that people don't ask questions. I've had some of those classes where there's not many questions.
Random question, but where do you generally sit in the classroom?
I sit in the very front. I'm a go-getter. I am a go-getter. I sit as close to the professor as I can. I'm like, rub off on me. Yeah, unapologetic.
Um,
Yeah.
so, have you had queer faculty, black faculty, who have taught some courses that you have liked in particular or liked their approach to teaching?
um, I've only had one black professor, and that was a asynchronous class.
Hmm.
And I would not have known that she was black unless I didn't know her personally. So, uh, and I haven't had a queer professor that I know of. I've worked with queer and black professors outside of the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
like in workshops and stuff, but to say I've had one, no. So I can't really answer that question because
Okay.
I haven't had either.
What? How did you end up at Folsom Lake College?
I ended up in Folsom Lake. Well, originally I didn't want to go there because it was in Folsom. I'm like, I grew up with this experience. I'm like, I'm out. I'm going to the city, like, blah, 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 blah. Sacramento City College, like, I actually enrolled in Sacramento City College. I did everything up until like taking a summer class like at West Sac by accident, which was much further away. And first, the class was too fast and it was too far for me. And I would have had to go on to it like every other day. And I dropped and I went to Folsom instead, begrudgingly. And I had a great experience actually, just meeting some of the staff there. So I was like, fuck it. Yeah.
So, you said you've worked with queer faculty and black faculty outside of the classroom. So, can you elaborate?
Yeah, at the Equity Center, they would come in, partner with us, and bring students over. They'd hold office hours, so all their students would come in, and sometimes we would do like professional development stuff. So we would host workshops, and the faculty, they get some sort of credit for it. You would know better than me, and we would cover certain topics and go back and forth, and it was really fun and engaging.
Is this when you were assistant working for the Equity Center?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of workshops? Any specific examples you could provide?
There was the letter, Martin Luther King's Birmingham jail letter, which I had never read until that, which was very profound. I'm like, how could we have not covered this in K through 12? But I really got to go back and forth with professors on that, make some points about how some of that correlates to the present. Some queer ones. We learned about a queer workshop from Valerie Tre. A few queer workshops which were like it was for like straight cis students, and it was like, if you could come out to your parents, how would you do it? Like, how would you come out? And they would write a letter to their parents, and they would talk about
being straight and cis?
About if they were gay.
Oh, like, okay.
Yeah. That's funny to imagine the reverse, but yeah, they would write that letter, and then they would what would they share? They would share what they expected that their parents would say. They would also share a lot about their feelings about having to do it, and yeah.
So, what do you think faculty can do in general to make queer and trans students feel respected in the classroom?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Sure. What do you think faculty can do to make queer and trans students feel respected in the classroom, just in general?
That's a good question. Yeah. Well, first of all, not putting a burden on those students to expect those students to teach those professors about themselves. So allowing those students to be students. I always say it's really basic, like treating them like with respect and like normal people. There's not a whole lot you have to do. I think when stuff goes wrong is when you start asking them questions or making weird jokes and this, that, and the third. Like, I believe that queer students go to the classroom to learn, and they want that basic privilege, and they don't want other shit interfering with it, including nosy questions, degrading comments, strange looks. Your demeanor is a part of it. So I think really just allowing those students to show up as themselves in the classroom is the best thing that they can do. And if they want to do more, I encourage them to do and learn more. Period.
Have you had negative experiences with faculty being acting in ways that feel inappropriate?
No, but I have trans friends who reported their professors giving them strange looks or asking them questions that were just simply inappropriate. Yeah. At Folsom Lake.
At Folsom Lake, yeah. What about faculty supporting Black students, and Black queer students in particular? If there's anything you want to add to that, anything you can think of?
Sure. I think reaching out to the black students, making sure that they feel welcome. A lot of times, like we don't feel welcome on campus because we don't see ourselves. You know, I've said this before in another venue, but I've said that we don't see a lot of people that look like us, that understand our dress, our music, some of the how we may speak sometimes, and we feel a little bit lonely because of that when we're on campus. So I think uh, making sure that those students feel welcome um, is a big part of it because a lot of times we don't feel welcome and we feel like everyone else is gets picked over us or they're favored more. Uh, yeah, I guess just centering us a little bit more. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's a hard.
well, it's big. It's very broad.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't have all the answers.
I have all the answers. That's
Not
okay.
yet. Yeah.
Um, hmm. So I have some questions. Well, let's see. Have you struggled academic? Well, you've talked about this some already. How you've struggled academically while at Folsom Lake College.
Yeah.
Right? Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Sure. Yeah. I struggled. Um, I struggled before college. Struggled a bit in college. Well, uh, I feel like all of college is a struggle, even when you're doing well, because you're working so hard to do well. Um, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
So you've worked while in college. Have you ever found it difficult to balance your work with your studies?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In what ways?
Um, I think like making sure that your employer cares that you're taking an exam. Some days you wish you had like a off day where you could just like call out of work and go to sleep, but that's not how life works. Um, so I think some of that gets in the way. I think if you're doing well, you learn how to like plan ahead and reserve certain days off, maybe even reserve a few days off just to rest after a period of exams. That's stuff that I've learned that is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, time management.
Has financial stress ever sort of interfered with your ability to focus?
Yeah, there was one semester where I dropped a few classes because my mom was driving my car and she totaled it by mistake, of course. It's an accident. She asked to borrow my car for something, got in an accident. It was covered. We weren't sure if it was going to be covered at the time. And it took a while to hear back about that for whatever reason. And I ended up dropping a class out of stress and just also out of the anticipated financial burden that I had to pay for some of that as well. Yeah.
Is there anything you think your professor could have done to help you stay in that class at that time?
Yeah, definitely changing some of my deadlines, like keeping deadlines, but maybe extending them into the future so I had some time to um, accommodate the classes in my personal life at the same time.
So I talked a little bit, or you talked a little bit about what professors can do to better support trans and Christians in the classroom. Is there anything you could think of about what the college could do, FLC could do to make trans and Christians feel more included on campus more generally?
Yeah, I think that the student life supervisors could work to keep LGBTQ clubs, keep them, I forget what the term is, but let's say activated, keep them alive and activated on the college campuses. That's a role that they do have with promoting student life. And I think that they could work to keep those clubs alive and help spur more, I forget the word, but keep those clubs engaged. and help support them with resources.
Have you been involved in any of the are there queer student clubs at FLC? What are they?
Yeah, there's it was called Rainbow Alliance,
Mhm.
and they used to hold this event. It was like a queer event where folks from across the college would come out and they'd be like, "Hey, I'm gay, and like we are here," and blah blah blah, and they'd share their experience and what the college could do better to support queer folks on campus. And they were pretty great. I'm not sure where they're at with the pandemic. I'm not sure if they're still around, but there is a I'd say noticeable queer population on the campus that you do see out and about. So there's no reason not to have another club.
Oh, so there's not currently a club that's active, or does it seem like it is?
Doesn't appear
Yeah.
to be. Yeah.
Were you involved in the Rainbow Alliance?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. What made you decide to get involved?
I wanted other queer friends. Yeah.
How did you like the group? How did you find sort of? Did you find value in being involved in the group?
Oh yes, they were smart. They were funny. They were really engaged in the community. Uh, yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah.
Any, if you could imagine like being involved in a queer student club today or in the future, what would you want to be involved in something like that again?
Yeah, I would. I hope to join something like that at Berkeley,
Mm-hmm.
and I will join something similar. Yeah.
What do you hope to get out of it?
I hope to get out of it connection. I hope to grow. Uh, yeah, I think through relationship you grow and become more mature as an adult. Uh, I'd like to grow more comfortable with that side of my identity. Be a community with more folks who are like me. Um, yeah,
Um, have you been involved in community at FLC in other ways?
yeah. I've been the president of a club. I was the president of the Folsom Lake College Business Association. Um, I have been really involved in every way you could think, from Student Senate, which is doing the business of the students, and also kind of leading CABE, which is Club and Events Board, and working at the college at the Equity Center, which hosts public events, and leading those events and speaking and doing stuff like that. So I've been really involved. Mm.
And how important do you think community has been for your sense of well-being at the college?
I think community has been the most important. Wait, sorry, what was the question again? Could you repeat it?
Just sort of how important do you think community has been for your sense of well-being at the college in general?
Yeah, I think community has been the most important thing for my well-being in college, period.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, why do you say that?
Well, I once heard that college is never done alone, and from anything from learning classes to doing the basic system stuff, from meeting with a counselor, getting certain forms done, you rely. It's a really interdependent system, and you rely on other people. I need tutoring. I need people to tell me which professor to take and why did they like their professor. You need people on every step of the journey. So having a good community is the best thing for you in college, and having that help takes that burden away. Yeah, so it helps mentally.
Do you ever seek out Black community?
Yeah, I do. There's not a lot of Black students at Folsom, so I know like a lot of the Black faculty and admin, like anyone Black who I can meet. Yeah, I'm friends with. I don't know a whole lot of Black students, unfortunately, just because Folsom doesn't have a lot that are in the spaces that I'm in. But when I do meet them, I try to like stay close. Yeah.
Have you made any Black queer friends at Folsom?
Black and queer, no. but I made Black queer friends at other campuses in Los Rios.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so you, as a student trustee, where you were a student trustee, is there anything you could think of that you think the district could do better to support queer and trans students?
Good question. I think the district should continue researching ways to improve their outreach to LGBTQ students. There was an idea that they would reach out to the SAC LGBT Center and that they would reach out to some of the homeless youth and let them know that Los Rios is an affirming campus and get them plugged into the college, get them priority access to resources and mentors and stuff like that. I think that was a terrific idea, and I really hope that they're following through with that. I think they should continue more stuff like that throughout the Sacramento Valley region. So whether it be Auburn, whether it be Sacramento, Elk Grove, I think they should continue doing that and really try to draw those students in. I think that they're getting some one-time funds as well. I think they should look into creating scholarships for LGBTQ students. And I think that they should make those scholarships not too difficult to obtain. I think sometimes there's an issue for some students to get letters of recommendation coming from certain backgrounds. I don't think every scholarship should have tons of barriers. So I think in this case they should look into lessening some of the barriers and increasing more scholarships. I think there's a whole lot that they can do. I could just go down the list. I think that they're doing a great job now and that there's more work that they could do, a lot more work that they could do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything at the district level about establishing more all-gender bathrooms on the campuses?
I haven't heard anything regarding that, and I'm not privy to those conversations.
Okay. Yeah. How do you think that district, it's a very broad question.
Yeah.
How do you think the district is doing right now with regard to equity efforts in general, including support for Black students?
I think the district is at a good place with it. I think that they're doing a good job from my understanding. I think that COVID messed up some of the metrics. You know, when we look at data, we were doing well, we were doing better with our equity goals. And since the pandemic, things have really fallen. Maybe I could rephrase that question. Could you ask that again?
Sure. How do you think the district is doing in general around its equity goals, especially for Black students, but just in general?
Yeah. Well, I think in general, I think that that the district is in the right place. Equity is obviously one of their main priorities, and I think it should stay so given the governor's priorities and just helping people in general and really making sure that education is accessible for everyone. I think that the efforts and results that they had through their efforts before the pandemic were great, but the pandemic really sort of changed the trajectory to those equity goals. So stuff's really fallen down and decreased. But I think that they're in the right place to make a comeback, and I think that they're doing a good job on that part generally. Now about Black students, I know that Black students are struggling the most out of any group when it comes to equity gaps. And I think that they could do a whole lot better. I think they could focus on reaching out to Black students where they are. So wherever the most Black students are in this area, they need to focus on better outreach in those areas. Campuses like Sacramento City need to be a priority when we're talking about reaching out to Black students. I think Folsom Lake College is not a priority when reaching out to Black students, but it is important. Because there are Black students on every campus, and Folsom Lake College has a satellite campus in Rancho Cordova, which has Black communities there that were in the military back in the past. Anyways, Black communities there. They need to focus on that. So colleges like Sacramento City, ARC, their performance with Black students, that's important because that's where the most Black students are. So if we're talking about helping them, we need to look at those colleges first.
You said SCC and what was the other college?
ARC.
ARC.
And I think it's really important at Folsom too, but I'm gonna be realistic. People don't always like hearing this, but the most Black students are at Sacramento City and ARC, and yes, Folsom Lake College's satellite campus in Rancho Cordova. That is true. So we really need to focus in those areas where they're at.
Anything else you'd like to add on that, or anything you want to elaborate on?
Yeah, I think that the district's equity goals are commendable. I think it's important that's in the conversation, in every conversation that's being had about education. I think that if they maintain their efforts, that the outcomes will improve like before the pandemic. And granted that the pandemic occurred, the district needs to stay innovative and they need to stay on their toes because things have changed and what may have worked in the past will not work today. Students like different offerings now. Before, students weren't really inclined to go online. Now they're more inclined to want to stay online. So we need to make sure that there are diverse offerings for classes. We need to make sure that there are diverse times that those students can go to class. So whether it be night, early mornings, those need to be available for students because the majority of students are, they're over the age of 24, they have full-time jobs, and they have special circumstances that need to be accounted for. That's really important when it comes to equity. About queer students, they need to, I think, keep being vocal proponents like they are, maybe work on some of like the academic piece of it, like having queer studies really reflected in the classrooms that is necessary for. I think that they should talk to queer faculty and queer students about what is right, what the right actions and steps to take, so they don't do anything that's misguided or ignorant and ruin the efforts completely because they didn't reach out to the folks they need to be talking to. I think that's really important, having a seat at the table. So whoever they're trying to help, or whatever group, whatever demographic, we need those individuals at the table as well, informing the decisions. I think that is critical. What else? Yeah, I think supporting faculty of color, admin of color, and queer faculty and queer admin, supporting them, giving them a voice again, a seat at the table, and giving them access to resources is important, especially when shit occurs. Stuff happened with at ARC, and it was so great that they supported Professor Melanie Dixon. I'm really not privy to what happened. I heard something happened possibly with the transgender staff member or something at another college. I'm not really sure. I just overheard. But people again, they really stood up for her, and the union leader made some great remarks. And I think it's important that that symbolism is, it stays. That Los Rios stands with its queer and BIPOC faculty, staff, admin, students, whomever. That it stands alongside of them and that it supports them. I think that's really important because that signals to the community, it signals to the students and whoever works for the district that they're important, they're supported, and that this is a home for them. Yeah. I don't know what else I have to say, but
Well, I just have one additional question, and if there's anything else you wanted to add in general, including in response to other questions I've asked, or I haven't asked, that you think I should have asked. So my final question is, what makes you excited about being a college student?
Yeah, what makes me excited about being a college student? Learning. I love learning. It's growth. Um, it's painful. It's new. I have like freedom in a way to make mistakes and learn from them, and not be punished as severely as if I made a mistake at my job on something that was really important. If I make a mistake on a project, so what? I'm a student. I'm supposed to make mistakes. Um, I really like that. I really like meeting people. Um, I really like college. It's so lively. It's full of energy and it's full of just new stuff. You're here to learn. Um, yeah, that's fine.
And so, what are you excited uh, about what's in store for you in the future?
I'm excited to go to Berkeley because there's just a vast amount of resources there. Um, I can do research. I can. I feel like the world is my oyster there. Um, I did a great job at community college, and I feel like community college is like the land of opportunity. And I feel the same about where I'm going to go in the fall, which is UC Berkeley. And I think they have an amazing institution, and I think there's great stuff for me to uh, get into there. Yeah.
Right. Anything else at all you'd like to add or questions you'd like to return to?
No, not from my understanding. Yeah, I think that completes it.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.